Elliotte Friedman was on Jeff Merrick's radio show and kind of was like, I was asked to make a surprise free agency prediction, and he predicted Jake Guentzel to the Blackhawks. So talked about that a lot on yesterday's show. Today, Kyle Davidson was asked about it and just in general spending money on free agency. Quote, for me with free agency or trade or whatever, because players you trade for could have term, it just has to make sense. This is the way we approached last offseason as well. If it makes sense and we feel there's value there, then it's something we'll explore. Another quote, you talk about and you think about everything and you evaluate every situation that could present itself. Trade, free agency, the different players available in the draft. They just have to make sense in the grand scheme of things. If they don't, you move past them. If they do, you consider them. And even those, they probably never happen. So that is a big nothing burger of Kyle Davidson basically saying, yes, we're going to do something in free agency.
I'm not telling you, Dick.
That's
a lot of words to say that.
Yeah. All right, so then further advancing this, the new 32 Thoughts podcast with Merrick and Elliotte Friedman dropped today and came up again. So the update from Friedman today was basically Carolina is making Jake Guentzel's rights available for a mid-round pick. So if you want to give them a third or fourth round pick, they will give you the Jake Guentzel. They don't think they're going to resign him. The rights to negotiate with him. Also, he kind of doubled down and said it makes sense to what the Hawks are doing. They're trying to move forward a little bit in this rebuild, and Jake Guentzel makes a lot of sense for them. So he said it's not impossible that it would happen, which is him probably hedging a little bit, which is smart. So here's the thing. If you missed yesterday's show, we all kind of had differing opinions about it. And I think to summarize it, we're all on board if the term makes sense. So with that, like Greg wants a shorter term. I'm a little bit willing to go longer and say, hey, maybe the last 2 years are not ideal. But are you giving up now draft assets to have the rights to sign Guentzel?
If you're giving up, so this year the Blackhawks have 2/3 and a fifth. They don't have a fourth. If you're giving up the fifth, sure. I don't think twice about that. So long as trading something for his rights means there's already been a wink conversation that says, hey, if we trade for you, like, we're getting something done, or there's already mutual interest or whatever. I'd also, in that scenario, be comfortable giving up, like, they have 67th and 72nd overall. If you want to give up 72nd overall, the latter of their third-round picks this year, to secure talking to Jake Guentzel and getting a deal done, and if we're talking 6x8, which was predicted by Daily Faceoff, based off, I forget the metrics, but that was kind of like the prediction of the contract, market value, everything for Guentzel. If you want to save a little money and give him an extra year, 7x7, that's an option too. I still feel like, one, Friedman bringing this up again, like he's not someone that's just going to talk out of his ass just for the fact that he wants to do it.
And if he does, he says so.
Right. Yeah.
Bro.
And two, I feel like, paired with what Kyle Davidson said at the end of the year, paired with what prominent guys like Seth Jones and Nick Foligno said at the end of the year, I'm publicly and I'm sure privately to Kyle Davidson's face, they don't want to go through another year like they did last year or the year before. So at some point you have to look to make improvements. And I think if there's mutual interest from both Chicago and Jake Guentzel to make something work, I think that's the kind of guy that you bring in, that you pair with Connor Bedard. You have around younger guys like Lucas Reichel, Philip Kurashev, Frank Nazar is likely going to make this roster at some point this year. You have to start playing some hockey that is higher quality, and Jake Guentzel's a guy that improves that roster. And sure, if you're paying him $8 million, $7 million down the road, and you're talking about a contending team, if he's first line Jake Guentzel at 35 years old making $8 million, you probably look at it and you're like, something went wrong here, because that spot should have been taken by somebody else that you've tried to draft and develop and whatnot, because those are the guys that Davidson is clearly investing in, these high draft picks and these guys that he's pinpointed as his guys through the draft that he wants to develop and be part of the next wave. I don't know. I think it makes a lot of sense to try and improve, and I think, as much as we hem and haw about not getting in salary cap situations, I think the Blackhawks are still far away from having to worry about salary cap hell, quote unquote, if it's 4 or 5 years down the road where this money now starts to hurt you.
But if we're talking, all right, so if we're talking 7x7, which to me that cap hit feels a little low, but maybe Guentzel likes
too many years.
It's too many years, but at the same time though, 7 years from now, $7 million is going to be $4 million.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
But it's $7 million you could probably be spending on a younger, better player at that point.
Yeah. Well, I know I'm not giving him a no movement clause.
You can also front load a contract to make the actual dollars, the actual dollar hit different.
Right. I don't care about that.
They did that with Andreas Athanasiou.
Right.
So
but
if
the
you,
cap hit
so
is
if
still
you,
the same.
sure,
I
but
don't care about the actual money. That's
sure,
not
but if
my
you're
money.
looking to, if you're 5 years into a 6 year or 7 year contract with Jake Guentzel, let's say that he's got a modified no trade clause or something, not completely full no movement,
yeah,
but
like a 10
team or a
yeah.
15 team or something. Yeah, the cap hit is still high, but the actual dollars, like when you get down to like trade deadline time, that's a consideration that teams have more than the actual cap hit, because the cap hit, let's face it, like it's imaginary to some teams. So it's the actual dollars that they actually have to pay a guy. So if you front load it, you could say in those first 4 years you're going to make 90% of your money or whatever. There's ways to make moving something like that, if you ever get to that point, easier.
Yeah.
I'm just not a fan. I like Jake Guentzel. I think he obviously makes his team a lot better. I just don't want the long-term deal. Now is not the time for that, to be giving 7-year deals, 6-year deals to guys who are going to be 30. Now's not the time. Will be a time and a place for that. It's just not if he wants to come here on a 3 or 4 year deal, awesome.
And overpay the hell out of him.
Yes, dude.
Be
I'm
like,
all
here's
for
$40
that.
million.
Beautiful. Done.
Yeah.
I would not lose a wink of sleep over that. I just don't want this super long deal, because now is not the time. You can improve this team without giving a 7 or 8 year contract. There are plenty of guys to make you go out and get a combination of a Max Domi, a Jack Roslovic, Jake DeBrusk. Dakota Joshua is another guy I'd love to see in a Blackhawks uniform. Those make your team better, along with second year of Bedard, full year of Nazar, hopefully an improved Reichel, a healthy Taylor Hall. Like, those guys make sure you're not playing Colin Blackwell, Taylor Radish, and Reese Johnson every night, which makes your team better. No offense to those guys, but let's just call it what it is. We're not at that point yet. Look, when we go back to the last Blackhawks Cup run and how it was built, we're entering the portion of the rebuild where you go out and try and get a Patrick Sharp on the trade market, or you go out and you trade for Andrew Ladd. That's the point. Those are the type of moves I'd rather see. Go get those guys that are either just doesn't have a spot, or getting forced out on a talented team that's ready to be, that's 24, 25, 23, ready to be a full-time. Those are the, I know.
Yeah, it's like a couple years ago, people were talking about Nick Robertson.
Yeah.
As a guy like that.
We're at that point of the rebuild. We're in the go find a Patrick Sharp rebuild. The Blackhawks didn't make a big splash in free agency. In 2007, 2008, they finished with 88 points. They were 6 points out of a playoff spot. That's when they went and spent big money on Brian Campbell and Christian Balhouet. They didn't spend big money on Marian Hossa until they got eliminated from the Western Conference Finals. You don't go get a Jake Guentzel when you're a 52-point team. You go get a Jake Guentzel when you got eliminated in the second round and you want to get to the Stanley Cup Final. That's the time for that, not now.
Yeah, and
I
think
they traded for Andrew Ladd?
Jay's guy.
I don't want to talk about it.
So who are you giving up to get Andrew Ladd in this scenario?
Well, I mean, if you compare the two and their careers, A Lucas Reichel type player? Someone like that? If Lucas Reichel has a better year this year, you could move him. But I'm not.
I think Ruutu is more proven than Reichel was at that point.
Right. So you're not going to trade Lucas Reichel for anybody right now. His value is as low. But well,
that's the thing though. Is they're saying they need to get better now. They need to improve now.
And there are ways to get better now while still building for the future. And it doesn't involve signing a 30-year-old guy and giving him $8 million.
I'm down with it if the term is right. Like, if it's going to be a long deal, it's got to be under 8. If it's going, for me, ideally, it would be a 4-year deal with a massive overpay, saying, "Thank you, Jake Guentzel, you're the man. Here's $40 million to come here for 4 years and get us over the bridge and help Connor Bedard thrive a little bit, and then we'll revisit things at the end of this deal. Like if you want to finish your career here or whatever, figure it out." But yeah, the $7 million, the 7-year thing. I don't know if Jake Guentzel is the kind of guy who's going to be great in 7 years, or good in 7 years.
I mean, he's a guy that's had injury issues.
Yeah.
I think if you're
the 7-year deal makes sense for a team that's like, we're going to win a Stanley Cup within 3 years with Jake Guentzel, because then we don't care about the back end because we've won a Stanley Cup. We got a banner. That's forever. Blackhawks aren't going to be contending for a Stanley Cup in the first couple years of that contract. They're going to hopefully be contending in the back end of his contract, where it might hinder you more than help you.
Ash brings up a good point. Martin Havlat was brought in like as kind of that bridge before they were able to bring in Hossa, but that was a shorter deal.
Right.
That was not a long-term
thing. So if Guentzel
thing.
wants the Marty Havlat deal, awesome. Sign
Yeah.
it. I'll fly to Carolina and fly him back here and drive him to the United Center. Great, but
I'm sure
you
he
didn't
doesn't.
sign Martin Havlat to a 7-year contract.
We all silly like the mayor.